The distress call. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation fell silent as the emergency transmission flickered to life. The holographic image showed a Calixi diplomat, her translucent skin pulsing with fear patterns that needed no translation. Didris floated behind her in what appeared to be the remnants of a command center. "Please," she gasped, her voice translated into the standard galactic tongue. "It's consuming everything. 3 colony worlds gone in days. Our homeworld has perhaps a week before it reaches us. We've begun evacuations, but billions will die without intervention. We beg for aid." The recording continued, showing footage that made even the oldest Federation representatives shift uncomfortably. A wall of darkness, not just absence of light, but absence of everything, spreading across star systems like cosmic wildfire, leaving nothing in its wake. High Chancellor Vexnar, an ancient being who had led the Federation for 2 centuries, raised a gnarled hand to pause the transmission. "The nearest Federation fleet is in the Aurelian sector," she announced, her voice grave. "They would require 37 days to reach Calixi space." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "Too long," someone said. "Far too long." "What of the Metrazi vessels?" asked another voice. "Their quantum drives would still require 18 days, interrupted the Federation's military advisor, "and their weapons would likely be insufficient against a threat of this magnitude." Ambassador Threll of the Endari watched the debate unfold from his observer's seat. The Endari had joined the Federation 9 centuries ago, one of its oldest members. They were known for their analytical minds and long lifespans. Threll had seen crises come and go, but something about this one felt different. It felt final. His gaze drifted to the far corner of the chamber, where a single human sat quietly observing the proceedings. Ambassador Chen Wei represented humanity, the Federation's newest and most controversial members. Humans had joined just 7 years ago, classified as Class 12 Deathworlders, beings from a planet so hostile that by all logic, they should have perished before achieving spaceflight. Earth's gravity, weather patterns, predators, diseases, and even its radiation levels were lethal by most galactic standards. Humans had not only survived but thrived there, developing unusual physical resilience and psychological traits that many Federation species found disturbing. Aggression, competitiveness, and a willingness to take risks that bordered on suicidal. More concerning to many Federation members was humanity's relationship with warfare. While most advanced species outgrew armed conflict, humans continued to prepare for it even in times of peace. They maintained military forces that seemed excessive to most Federation members, though the full extent of their capabilities remained unknown, as humans were notoriously secretive about their defensive systems. "There is one option we haven't considered," Threll said, rising slowly to his feet. The chamber quieted, all eyes turning to the Endari elder. "Humans maintain a military outpost in Sector 7, at the edge of what they call the Kuiper Belt. That's merely 8 days from Calixi space at standard drive speeds." The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken concerns. "The humans?" asked a representative of the gentle Florani people. "Their ships are primitive compared to Federation standards. What could they possibly do against this cosmic devourer?" Threll took a measured breath. "I believe what humans show us of their military capabilities may not represent the full extent of their power." Now Ambassador Chen stirred, her expression carefully neutral as dozens of alien gazes shifted to her. "Explain," demanded High Chancellor Vexnar. "Last cycle, I visited Earth on a diplomatic mission," Threll continued. "Their military leaders spoke of defensive capabilities beyond what they've revealed to the Federation. They used a curious human expression, keeping an ace in the hole. It refers to hiding one's true strength until it's needed. You suggest we trust these newcomers with such a crisis?" asked another Federation member, mandibles clicking with anxiety. Threll looked again at the frozen image of the terrified Calixi diplomat. "I suggest we have no choice. The humans are the only ones close enough to help, and I believe they possess ships more powerful than they've admitted to the Federation. High Chancellor Vexnar closed her compound eyes, considering. Humans had proven unpredictable, often aggressive, but they had also shown surprising compassion on numerous occasions. They had an odd habit of rushing to defend others, even at great personal risk. "Very well," she said finally. "We will contact Earth immediately. Ambassador Chen, will your government respond to this plea?" All eyes turned to the human representative. Chen stood, her posture straight, face betraying nothing of her thoughts. "I will transmit the request to Earth High Command immediately, Chancellor. But I must be clear, if we intervene, the Federation may see aspects of human technology that we have chosen not to display publicly. Are you prepared for that?" The implied admission hung in the air. Humans had been hiding their true capabilities all along. Vexnar fixed Chen with all four of her eyes. Will these hidden capabilities save the Galaxy? If anything can, they will. Chen's voice carried absolute certainty. "Then we are prepared," Vexnar declared. "Ambassador Chen, tell your people the Federation formally requests humanity's intervention in this crisis." As Chen hurried from the chamber to transmit the message, Ambassador Threll couldn't help but wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were classified as Class 12 Deathworlders for good reason. They were survivors, fighters, creatures evolved to overcome threats through aggression when necessary. Now he was asking them to fight something that devoured stars, and he could only hope that whatever terrible weapons they might unleash wouldn't eventually become a greater threat than what the Galaxy now faced. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood with her hands clasped behind her back, gazing through the panoramic viewport of Titan Station. Saturn's largest moon provided both resources and cover for one of humanity's most advanced military installations. Outside, against the backdrop of Saturn's rings, training exercises were underway, small fighter craft darting between holographic targets. Performance metrics up 12% since last month's drills. "Admiral," reported Commander Jackson, who stood beside her. Vasquez nodded, but said nothing. These vessels, the ones the Federation had seen, had been permitted to inspect, were adequate for patrol duties and minor skirmishes. But they weren't what kept her awake at night. The real power of Earth's fleet remained hidden in the shadows of Neptune's orbit, where even the Federation's watchful surveillance couldn't penetrate. 7 ships that should not exist, vessels incorporating technologies humanity had promised the Federation they would never develop. The communication alert chimed, interrupting her thoughts. "Admiral Vasquez," said the station's AI. "Priority message from Earth Command. Ambassador Chen has transmitted an emergency request from the Galactic Federation. Federation species Galaxy facing extinction-level threat. Time sensitive." 20 minutes later, Vasquez sat in stunned silence as the images of dying star systems played on her screen. Ambassador Chen's face appeared after the recording ended. "Admiral, the Galaxy have perhaps 1 week before this entity reaches their homeworld. Billions will die without immediate intervention. No Federation forces can arrive in time. Titan Station is closest. Will Earth help?" Vasquez closed her eyes momentarily. Opening them, she tapped a button on her desk. "President Reyes, authorization Vasquez, Omega 9. The president's face appeared almost instantly. He must have been waiting for her call. "You've seen the transmission?" he asked. "I have, Mr. President. Your assessment?" Vasquez leaned forward. "Sir, that footage shows entire star systems being consumed. Whatever this entity is, it could eventually reach human space. Better to engage it there than here." The president's expression was grave. "You're proposing we deploy the Neptune fleet." It wasn't a question. Project Neptune had been Earth's greatest secret for 20 years. 7 warships unlike anything the Federation had ever imagined. Ships with technologies the Federation had banned millennia ago. Ships designed precisely for existential threats like this one. "Yes, sir. All 7 vessels." President Rice's expression hardened. "You understand what's at stake. Once the Federation sees these ships, everything changes. Our agreements, our standing, possibly our membership. With respect, Mr. President, if we do nothing, billions die, and this entity continues consuming everything in its path. Eventually, it reaches Earth. After a long moment, Reyes nodded. I'll inform the Security Council. Begin preparations immediately. Full deployment authorization for all 7 Neptune vessels. He paused. And Admiral, God help us all. 6 hours later, Vasquez stood in a colossal underground hangar beneath Neptune's icy surface. Before her loomed the dark hull of the Judgment, nearly 2 kilometers long. Its surface was a strange amalgam of metals and something that seemed almost alive, shifting subtly in patterns that made the eye want to look away. Workers swarmed around 6 other equally massive vessels: the Retribution, Harbinger, Nemesis, Leviathan, Reckoning, and Vindication. These ships had never left their hidden dock. Many believed they never should. Captain Diana Mendez approached, her uniform crisp despite the short notice. All systems online. Admiral, the bioneural interfaces are responding well to the activation sequence. Vasquez nodded. And the crews? All personnel reported for duty. 500 on each ship as planned. Vasquez looked up at the Judgment again. These ships represented everything humanity had promised the Federation they would never build: weapons that manipulated the quantum fabric itself, hulls partly composed of engineered living tissue that could heal damage, and artificial intelligence systems that understood warfare on a level that even humans found unsettling. We launch in 4 hours, she said. Tell the crews, tell them this is what we built these ships for: to protect life, even when it's not human life. As Mendez walked away, Vasquez couldn't help but wonder if the Federation would ever forgive humanity for keeping such secrets, or if they would ever trust humans again once they saw what these ships could do. But that was a problem for later. Right now, the Calixi needed help, and humanity had never been good at turning away from a cry for help, even if answering it meant revealing their darkest secrets. Operation Thunderstrike. The journey through hyperspace was strangely quiet. Captain Diana Mendez walked the curved corridors of the Judgment, her footsteps echoing on decks that seemed to respond to her touch. When no one was looking, she would sometimes place her palm flat against a bulkhead and feel the ship pulse beneath her fingers, almost like a heartbeat. These ships were different from anything humans had built before. Their hulls contained genetically engineered tissues grown from modified coral. Their propulsion systems harnessed artificial quantum singularities, and their weapons manipulated the fundamental forces of reality in ways that violated several Federation treaties. Diana entered the command center where Admiral Vasquez stood watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through a wide view screen. 2 hours until we reach Calixi space, she reported. Vasquez nodded. Status: all 7 ships maintaining formation. Weapons at full charge. The Federation observer vessel is still transmitting requests for information about our capabilities. Vasquez turned to look at her. And what have you told them? Only what you authorized, Admiral. Basic information about speed and conventional weapons. Nothing about the biological components or the null space cannons. Good. Vasquez looked troubled. The Federation needs our help, but that doesn't mean they're ready to know everything. Some of these technologies, they banned them for a reason. A soft chime interrupted them. Admiral, said the ship's AI, its voice unnervingly human, we're receiving updated scan data from Calixi space. The entity has accelerated its consumption rate. 2 more systems have been lost in the past 6 hours. Vasquez's face hardened. Show me. A holographic display materialized between them. Diana felt her stomach turn as she watched darkness spread across star systems like spilled ink, leaving nothing behind. What is this thing? She whispered. We'll find out soon enough, Vasquez replied. Alert all ships. We exit hyperspace at full battle readiness. The next 2 hours passed with tense efficiency. When the Judgment finally tore back into normal space, Diana stood at her tactical station on the bridge, hands hovering over controls unlike any found on standard human vessels. 6 other massive ships emerged alongside them, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light of nearby stars. On a small diplomatic vessel that had been permitted to follow them, Federation representatives watched in stunned silence. They had never seen ships like these, never imagined humans possessed such technology. "There," said the sensor officer, pointing to a display. "Edge of the Calixi home system." Everyone turned to look. At first, Diana saw nothing unusual, just the distant light of a yellow star surrounded by planets. Then she noticed something strange spreading across the system's outer edge, moving inward. It wasn't just darkness, it was an absence. Where it passed, stars in the background vanished. Matter itself seemed to disappear. "Magnify," ordered Vasquez. The image zoomed in, and Diana gasped. The darkness was composed of billions of tiny objects moving together, a swarm of some kind. Each piece no larger than a small automobile, but together forming a cloud vast enough to engulf entire planets. "Life signs?" Vasquez asked. "Nothing we recognize as life," replied the science officer. "But there's definitely organization, intelligence, purpose." Vasquez stood, her decision made. "All ships, battle formation Delta. Prepare null space cannons but hold fire until my command. Let's see how it reacts to our presence first." The 7 ships moved forward, spreading into a wedge formation with judgment at the point. As they approached the edge of the swarm, the tiny objects suddenly halted their advance toward the inner planets. For a moment, everything was still. Then, as if responding to an unheard command, the swarm changed direction. It flowed like liquid, streaming directly toward the human ships with frightening speed. "It's noticed us," Diana said, her fingers now firmly on her weapon controls. "And it's curious," Vasquez added. "Or hungry." The swarm accelerated, closing the distance rapidly. Vasquez took a deep breath. "All ships, show them what Deathworlders can do." Fire. 7 beams of impossible darkness, darker than the void of space itself, lanced out from the human ships. Where they touched the swarm, reality itself seemed to twist and tear. Billions of the tiny objects simply ceased to exist, leaving gaping holes in the cosmic cloud. On the Federation observation vessel, Ambassador Threll watched in horrified fascination. Now he understood why humans had kept these ships secret, and why the galaxy had been right to fear them. The swarm reacted with unexpected intelligence. It split into 7 tendrils, each targeting a different human vessel. Where the tendrils touched the ship's shields, energy crackled and sparked. Shield holding at 83%, Diana reported as the judgment shuddered under the assault. "The swarm appears to be analyzing our defenses. The bioneural interfaces are reporting unusual activity," called the science officer. "The swarm is attempting to communicate with our ship's organic components." Vasquez's eyes narrowed. "Sever the connection. Switch to manual control systems." For 3 days, the battle raged across the Calixi system. The human ships unleashed weapons that defied conventional physics, null space cannons that erased matter from existence, quantum disruptors that unraveled the swarm's molecular structure, and gravity lances that created localized singularities, crushing millions of the tiny objects into pinpoints of infinite density. But the swarm adapted. Each attack seemed less effective than the last, as though the collective intelligence was learning, evolving its defenses in real time. By the 4th day, the human fleet had managed to push the swarm back from the Calixi homeworld, giving the evacuation ships precious time to escape. But the cost was mounting. The Harbinger had sustained critical damage, its bioneural systems corrupted by contact with the swarm. The Nemesis and Retribution had depleted over 60% of their weapon reserves. In the command center of the judgment, Admiral Vasquez called an emergency conference with her captains. "The swarm is adapting faster than our predictive models anticipated," she said, her face grim on the secure channel. "At this rate, we'll exhaust our offensive capabilities before achieving complete neutralization. We've analyzed its behavior patterns, said Captain Yukio Tanaka of the Vindication. This entity isn't random. It exhibits characteristics similar to ancient Earth legends, world eaters, star devourers. What are you suggesting? Vasquez asked. I'm saying humanity might have encountered something like this before, thousands of years ago. Our oldest myths speak of darkness between stars that consumes everything. What if those weren't just stories? Diana frowned. Even if that's true, how does it help us now? Because those legends often included how the monsters were defeated, Tanaka replied. Not through force alone, but through sacrifice and transformation. A long silence followed. Finally, Vasquez spoke. You're proposing Protocol Omega. It wasn't a question. Protocol Omega was the Neptune fleet's last resort option, a theoretical procedure that had never been tested outside simulation. Yes, Admiral, Tanaka confirmed. The swarm adapts to our attacks because it can predict them. But Protocol Omega would be unpredictable. Vasquez closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her decision was made. Prepare all ships for Protocol Omega. Captain Mendez, the judgment will serve as the catalyst. Transfer all non-essential personnel to the Leviathan and prepare your ship for the procedure. On the Federation observation vessel, Ambassador Threll watched with growing concern as 6 of the human ships began to pull back, forming a wide perimeter around the battle zone. Only the Judgment remained engaged with the swarm, firing its weapons in patterns that seemed designed not to destroy but to attract attention. What are they doing? Demanded High Chancellor Vexnar, who had arrived hours earlier on an emergency transport. Threll shook his head. I don't know, but I suggest we increase our distance from the engagement zone. Aboard the Judgment, Diana stood on the nearly empty bridge. Only she and a skeleton crew of volunteers remained, those willing to risk everything on an untested theory. All non-essential personnel evacuated, she reported to Vasquez, who had transferred her flag to the Leviathan. Bioneural integration at maximum capacity. Quantum core primed for overload. Captain Mendez, Vasquez said, her image flickering on the view screen. You still have time to transfer command to an automated system and evacuate with your crew. Diana shook her head. With respect, Admiral, Protocol Omega requires human intuition to succeed. The AI can't replicate the necessary unpredictability. Vasquez nodded, understanding in her eyes. Very well. Commence Protocol Omega on your mark. And Captain, it has been an honor. Likewise, Admiral. Diana turned to her remaining crew. Connect me directly to the bioneural interface. Full integration. Warning indicators flashed across control panels as medical officers attached neural connectors to Diana's temples and spine. This level of integration with the ship's biological components was theoretically possible, but had been deemed too dangerous for practical use. The human mind wasn't designed to process information at the scale a starship operated on. But that was precisely the point. Protocol Omega wasn't about processing information. It was about introducing human unpredictability into the equation. Integration complete, reported the medical officer. Captain, your neural patterns are now directly linked to the ship's bioneural network. Quantum core is responding to your brainwave patterns. Diana closed her eyes as awareness expanded through her consciousness. Suddenly, she could feel every centimeter of the massive vessel, its weapons, its shields, its very molecular structure, as if they were extensions of her own body. The sensation was overwhelming, exhilarating, terrifying. Bring us into the center of the swarm, she ordered, her voice overlapping with the ship's communication system. Full power to quantum drive. The Judgment surged forward, plunging deep into the heart of the cosmic devourer. The swarm reacted immediately, completely enveloping the ship in a cloud of tiny attackers that began systematically breaking down its shields. Shields at 40% and falling, reported an officer, his voice seeming distant to Diana's enhanced perception. Quantum core temperature rising beyond safety parameters, called another. Diana barely heard them. Her consciousness was expanding beyond the ship now, touching the very fabric of space-time around them. She could feel the swarm, not as billions of individual objects, but as a single entity with a hunger older than stars. "It's not consuming," she whispered. "It's converting, transforming matter into something else, harvesting energy for something vast." Through her expanded awareness, Diana could sense something ancient and patient at the core of the swarm, a mind so alien that even attempting to comprehend it sent jagged pain through her skull. "Now," she commanded, channeling her will through the ship's systems, "initiate quantum core overload." The Judgment's power plant, an artificial singularity contained within layers of exotic matter, began to destabilize. But rather than exploding outward as conventional physics would dictate, the collapsing singularity began to fold in on itself, creating a cascade of quantum paradoxes. Diana guided the process through pure intuition, her human unpredictability influencing how reality itself unraveled around them. The swarm, so adept at adapting to conventional attacks, found itself unable to predict or counter what was happening. "It's working," Diana gasped, blood trickling from her nose as the neural interface strained her biological systems. "The swarm is being drawn into the quantum disruption." Around the Judgment, space itself began to fold and twist. Billions of the tiny swarm components were pulled into the growing distortion, unable to escape the fundamental rewriting of physics occurring at the ship's core. On the Leviathan, Admiral Vasquez watched through tears as sensors struggled to make sense of what was happening. "The Judgment is gone," reported the science officer, "but the quantum disruption continues to expand, consuming the swarm at an exponential rate." Hours later, when the disruption finally collapsed in on itself, nearly 90% of the cosmic devourer had vanished, not destroyed, but transported somewhere beyond normal spacetime. The remaining fragments, cut off from their collective intelligence, drifted harmlessly through space, inert and lifeless. The Federation Council held an emergency session 3 days later. The evacuation of the Calixi homeworld had been completed successfully. Though 3 colony worlds had been lost, the remaining Neptune fleet ships maintained position at the edge of the system, ensuring no resurgence of the swarm occurred. Humanity violated no fewer than 17 Federation treaties by developing and deploying these vessels, declared one council member, mandibles clicking with agitation. And in doing so, saved billions of lives, countered another, including many of our own species. High Chancellor Vexnar raised her hand for silence. "Ambassador Chen, your people kept significant military capabilities hidden from the Federation. This represents a profound breach of trust." Chen stood, her expression solemn. "Chancellor, members of the Council, humanity developed the Neptune fleet as a last resort against existential threats. We kept them hidden because we knew how the Federation would react to such technologies. But when called upon to help, we did not hesitate to reveal our secrets." "At great cost," added Threll, who had witnessed the entire battle. "Captain Mendez and her crew sacrificed themselves to save not only the Calixi, but potentially countless other worlds that would have fallen to this cosmic devourer." Vexnar was quiet for a long moment. "The Council must reconsider many aspects of our relationship with humanity. But we cannot deny that when faced with extinction, it was the Deathworlders who answered our plea and gave their lives for species not their own." She turned to Chen. "For now, the Federation extends its deepest gratitude to Earth and its fleet. The sacrifice of the Judgment and her crew will be recorded in the Grey Archive, that all species may remember what humanity did here." As the council session adjourned, Threll approached Chen in the corridor outside. "Your people are full of contradictions. Ambassador, you build weapons of terrifying power, yet use them to save others rather than conquer. You keep secrets from your allies, yet sacrifice yourselves when called upon." Chen smiled sadly. "Perhaps that's what comes from evolving on a death world, Ambassador Threll. We understand that survival sometimes requires both terrible weapons and great sacrifice. The Federation will never look at humanity the same way again," Threll observed. "Good," Chen replied. Perhaps now they'll see us as we truly are, not just dangerous Deathworlders to be feared, but allies willing to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. In the void where the judgment had made its last stand, a small memorial now orbited, a simple plaque bearing the names of Captain Diana Mendez and her volunteer crew, along with words in both Human Standard and Galactic Common. They answered the plea that others could not, and brought forth their most fearsome ships not for conquest, but for salvation. Remember them not as Deathworlders, but as life-bringers.